Watch what happens when someone openly announces their ambition. They say it directly. They tell people what they want. They explain their goals. They make clear that, that they're climbing, that they're reaching for something, that they're trying to rise above their current position. And then watch what happens. People organize against them, not consciously, usually, not in a deliberate way. But the group senses a threat, and the group moves to neutralize it. Opportunities that should come their way get redirected. Information stops flowing to them. Subtle undermining begins. People who were friendly become distant. And the person, confused, wonders why their openness and ambition are being punished. Meanwhile, watch someone else move through the exact same environment with quiet effectiveness. This person never announces their ambitions. No one quite knows what they're after. They seem interested in the work itself, not in climbing. They seem like they're just doing their job, not building towards something. And somehow they keep advancing, they keep getting opportunities, they keep rising. And by the time people realize what happened, the person has already moved several steps up. So why does announcing ambition create resistance while hiding it creates freedom? And why is the ambitious person who seems unambitious far more effective than the one who wears their ambition openly? The answer reveals something about group psychology that most people never think about because they're too busy trying to be transparent and authentic. Groups have an automatic defense system against people they perceive as threatening to the group's equilibrium. And what threatens a group's equilibrium? Visible ambition. When someone in the group starts climbing, when someone starts reaching for a position of power or status, the group automatically perceives a threat. That person is trying to rise above the group. That person is trying to be special. That person is violating the implicit agreement that everyone should be relatively equal, and the group moves to neutralize that threat. Think about what's actually happening on a psychological level when you announce your ambition to a group. You're essentially saying, I don't think I'm equal to you. I think I'm better. I'm going to rise above you. And the group hears that. Maybe not consciously, but they hear it. And they activate their defense mechanisms. They start trying to slow you down. They start undermining you. They start giving opportunities to less ambitious people because at least those people aren't threatening the group's sense of equality. This is not about malice. This is not about people being petty. This is about basic group dynamics. Groups regulate themselves. Groups maintain equilibrium. And when someone starts standing out too much, when someone starts climbing too visibly, the group naturally activates to bring that person back down. It's like an immune system responding to an invader. The group has antibodies, and those antibodies are designed to attack threats to group cohesion. But here's what's fascinating. When someone hides their ambition, when they don't announce it, when they seem content to just be part of the group's defense mechanisms stay dormant. The person is not signaling a threat. The person seems like they're just doing their job, just contributing, just being a regular member of the group. And so the group lets their guard down. And in that lowered guard, in that moment when the group isn't actively defending against a threat, the person can actually move, can actually build, can actually advance. Let's look at how this manifests in specific context. In a workplace, someone openly says, I'm going to get promoted. I'm going to be a manager. I'm going to rise in this company. What happens? Their colleagues get defensive. Their superiors keep them in check. The informal network of gossip and information that usually flows toward ambitious people suddenly dries up. Opportunities that might have come their way get redirected to less obviously ambitious people. The person has essentially branded themselves as a threat, and the group moves to contain them. But someone else in the same workplace is quietly excellent at their job. They're not announcing ambitions. They're not telling people about their 5-year plan. They're just working well. They're solving problems. They're making others look good sometimes. They're not visibly climbing. And what happens? Information flows to them. Opportunities come to them. People want to work with them. By the time people realize this person is actually ambitious, the person has already been promoted twice. The person has already built alliances. The person has already positioned themselves in places where they have leverage. The group never organized against them because the group never perceived them as a threat. This is also why the most effective climbers are the ones who seem like they're not climbing at all. They're focused on the work. They're focused on being excellent. They're focused on understanding the organization and what it actually needs. They're not focused on being seen as ambitious. And because they're not broadcasting their ambition, because they're not signaling a threat, the group lets them be, and they move much faster than the person openly climbing. Think about what this means at a social level too. In friend groups, someone who is visibly trying to be the coolest person, or the most successful, or the highest status actually becomes less accepted. The friend group senses the threat and pushes back. But someone in the same friend group who is just focused on their own life, who isn't trying to be special, who isn't broadcasting their ambitions, can actually achieve far more and be far more successful without losing the friendship or the group support. Here's what's crucial to understand about this dynamic. It's not conscious. People don't sit around and consciously decide to block the obviously ambitious person. It just happens. The group senses a threat and activates. It's automatic. It's like an immune response. You don't think about activating your immune system when a virus gets in. Your body just does it automatically. The same thing happens in groups. Someone broadcasts ambition, and the group automatically activates its defense mechanisms. Now let's talk about how to actually hide your ambition without being deceptive. This is important because hiding your ambition is not about lying. It's not about pretending you don't want anything. It's about not broadcasting it. It's about keeping your ambitions to yourself. It's about focusing on the work itself rather than on how the work is positioning you. It's about understanding that you don't need to tell people about your ambitions for your ambitions to come true. The person who hides their ambition is still strategically positioning themselves. They're still making moves toward their goals. They're still building networks and accumulating resources, but they're not announcing it. They're not talking about it. They're not letting people see the calculation underneath the work. They're just focused on being excellent and on understanding the landscape. And by the time people realize what's happening, the person has already won. This is also why some of the most successful people are the ones who seem the most unambitious. They're focused on the work they love. They're focused on mastering their craft. They're focused on understanding their field deeply. They're not focused on climbing. And somehow, because they're not focused on climbing, because they're not broadcasting ambition, they end up climbing far faster than the people who are overtly ambitious. Think about the difference in how people respond to someone who says, I'm going to build something great versus someone who just quietly builds something great. The first person is announcing a threat. They're saying they think they're better than they currently seem. They're saying they're not satisfied with the current arrangement. The second person is just doing the work, and the work itself becomes the proof of capability. And by the time the work is done, the person is already in a position of strength. The group has already accepted them because the person never triggered the defense mechanisms. Here's something that's worth understanding about the psychology of visibility and threat. When someone is visible about their ambitions, they're creating a target. They're saying, here I am, trying to rise, trying to be special, trying to become more than I am. And people start watching them. People start measuring them against that stated ambition. People start rooting for them to fail, because if they fail, it proves that their ambition was premature. that they weren't as good as they thought they were. But the person who hides their ambition never creates that target. People never start watching them specifically to see if they'll fail. The person advances gradually, almost invisibly, until they're already in a position where they can't be easily knocked back down. This is also why so many ambitious people sabotage themselves. They broadcast their ambitions, they create targets, they activate group defense mechanisms, and then they're surprised when people seem to work against them. They think people are just jealous or petty. But actually, the person has triggered a completely predictable group response. The person has signaled a threat and the group has moved to neutralize it. Now, here's something that's important to acknowledge about the ethics of this. Hiding your ambition is not the same as being deceptive. You can be completely honest about what you're doing while still not broadcasting your larger ambitions. You can focus on being excellent at your work without explaining that excellence is part of a larger plan. You can make strategic moves without broadcasting your strategy. This is not dishonesty. This is just wisdom about how to move effectively in the world. Think about what happens when you release the need to have your ambitions acknowledged. You suddenly have far more freedom. You don't need to convince anyone that your goals are worthy. You don't need to recruit people to your vision. You don't need to have conversations about your aspirations. You just work toward them quietly. And by the time they're realized, they're realized. The people around you might not have known it was coming, but they'll recognize it once it arrives. This is also why some of the most powerful people are the ones who seem almost uninterested in power. They're focused on the work. They're focused on building something. They're focused on mastering something. They're not focused on being seen as powerful. And somehow, because they're not focused on being seen as powerful, because they're not broadcasting their ambitions, they actually accumulate far more power than the people who are constantly announcing their aspirations. The closing paradox that should sit with you is this: the more you announce your ambitions, the more the group organizes to prevent you from achieving them. The less you announce your ambitions, the more freely you can move toward achieving them. The person who tells everyone about their plan often finds their plan blocked. The person who quietly executes their plan often finds support appearing from unexpected places because they never triggered the group's defense mechanisms. Think about the implications of this for your own life. What ambitions are you currently broadcasting that could remain private? What goals are you talking about that could be pursued silently? What dreams are you announcing that could just be lived? And what would change if you stopped needing people to know about your ambitions and just focused on achieving them?